On the ragged outskirts of Leach, Texas, where the sun hit rusted trailers like fire on old tin and tired porch fans creaked in protest, lived 12-year-old Aaliyah Greene. While other kids woke to cartoons and cereal, she rose at 5 a.m. to scrub bakery floors alongside her mama, no questions asked. Miss Rochelle, slim as a broom handle but tougher than most men Aaliyah knew, believed in grace over gold. "We ain't rich, baby," she'd whisper, wiping sweat from her brow. "But we treat folks like we are." At Winslow Elementary, Aaliyah sat small in the back row, her school jumper patched at the elbows, her shoes taped at the toes. The other kids barely saw her, but her eyes held something unspoken, a weight, a rhythm, like lullabies left behind in her throat. Then, one Monday morning, the principal's voice buzzed through the PA. "Welcome to Talent Week. Sign-up sheet outside the office by Wednesday." The room erupted. "I'm doing a TikTok dance," one girl shouted. "I'm bringing my keyboard," said another. Aaliyah stayed quiet. That evening, after stacking trays and wiping icing off counters, she sat cross-legged on her mattress, an old cassette player beside her. It was cracked, half the tape warped, but when it played, her mama's voice sang through the static. Software pure. Scarborough Fair. Aaliyah reached for a pen. Her fingers trembled as she wrote her name on the back of a torn receipt. "I'll sing that one," she whispered. Mama's song. The next morning she stood staring at the bulletin board. Names filled the page in bright colors, hearts and stars scribbled beside them. She reached up slowly and etched her name on the very last line. Aaliyah Greene, singing. Barely 10 minutes passed before the snickers came. "She's singing? Ain't no way. Maybe she's gonna rap into a broomstick." Their laughter bounced off the lockers. Aaliyah heard every word, but she didn't flinch. Just pulled her sleeves down and walked off, the notebook in her hand holding lyrics copied in careful, slanted handwriting. That night, Miss Rochelle found her daughter standing by the window, singing under her breath. Her voice was shaky, unsure, but real, honest, like morning wind slipping through cotton curtains. Miss Rochelle didn't speak at first. She just sat on the edge of the bed. "I used to dream of a stage too," she said finally, "back when I was your age. But when Grandma got sick, I had to leave school. Never got the chance." She smiled softly, brushing a curl from Aaliyah's forehead. "But if I see you up there, even just once, that's more than enough dream for me." Aaliyah blinked through the mist in her eyes. "Will you come?" Her mama smiled. "Even if I gotta walk there barefoot." On rehearsal day, Aaliyah was called last. The classroom felt cold, filled with sideways glances and stifled laughs. The music teacher looked up. "Do you have a track?" Aaliyah shook her head. "No, ma'am. I'll sing it plain." A sigh, a cough, a few eye rolls, then silence. She closed her eyes, breathed in, and began. "Are you going to Scarborough Fair?" No microphone, no background music, no spotlight. Just her voice, fragile but unwavering. Within moments, chairs stopped shifting. Pens dropped. A teacher mid-sip froze, her coffee untouched. Something about Aaliyah's voice. It didn't ask to be heard. It just was. Her voice ended like mist dissolving into morning air. Soft, haunting, unresolved. And no one clapped. Not because it wasn't beautiful, but because they didn't know how to respond to something that cut through them like that. Aaliyah stared at her feet, unsure. In that hush, her breath was the only sound left. On the walk home, she asked quietly, "Mama, if they laugh next time, should I stop?" Miss Rochelle didn't answer right away. She just reached down and gently wrapped her hand around Aaliyah's. "Baby," she said finally, "you sing for the ones who ain't never been heard, not the ones who don't listen." The next morning, Winslow Elementary pulsed with noise and color. Banners hung from the rafters, glittered signs shouted, "Let your light shine," and bright balloons bobbed in the auditorium breeze. Someone had even rigged fairy lights across the folding stage. Aaliyah arrived early. She wore the only dress she owned that didn't have a tear. the white one her mama had ironed with a damp cloth and steady hands. Her hair was braided into two neat plaits, tied with tiny blue ribbons. Her shoes were still scuffed, but they were clean. Her eyes? Focused, quiet, fierce. She clutched her notebook close, the one where her lyrics lived in slanted lines and careful pencil strokes. Miss Rochelle stood by her side, exhausted from the overnight bakery shift, but glowing with pride, her hand never letting go of her daughters. One by one, the performances rolled out. A trio of girls spun and flipped under colored lights. A boy hammered out drum solos over a Bluetooth speaker while his mates hollered from the front row. A girl in pink crooned pop lyrics into a glitter mic, her voice swallowed by pre-recorded beats. Every act was met with cheers, claps, laughter, especially the loud kind saved for the popular kids. Aaliyah sat alone in the wings, her notebook still pressed to her chest. No one talked to her, just a few whispered glances. She's singing that song? No music? Girl thinks she's in a movie. Someone even readied their phone, not for memory, but mockery. A sticker pack opened, fingers hovering above record. The MC, a young teacher with a nervous smile, finally called her name. And now, our last act, a solo performance with no background music, singing Scarborough Fair. Please welcome Aaliyah Greene. A few hesitant claps, a few chuckles. She stepped out. Stage lights blinded her to the crowd, but she knew. Third row, near the aisle, was her mama. That was enough. Aaliyah took a breath that steadied her spine, then began. Are you going to Scarborough Fair? Her voice didn't explode. It entered, like smoke under a door, like light through a cracked wall. At first, someone in the back whispered. Another shifted in their seat. But then, silence. Not the bored kind, not the restless kind, the held breath kind, the kind that says, wait. Something's happening. A teacher froze mid-sentence, pen hovering inches above her notepad. An older man in the audience, white hair, thick glasses, slowly took off his specs and wiped his eyes. Each lyric floated with a weight no child should carry. Empty kitchens, dreams scribbled in margins, lullabies learned in fatigue. No glitter, no beat drops, just truth. And that was louder than anything that had come before. No lights flickered, no music swelled, just a silence so deep it felt holy. When Aaliyah finished the last note, the auditorium didn't move. For 3 whole seconds, maybe 4. Not a soul clapped. Not because they didn't want to, because they'd forgotten how. It felt wrong to interrupt something so bare, so alive. Then, a single pair of hands started. Slow. Software. The elderly man in the second row. Then another, and another. Within seconds, the entire auditorium stood, row by row, clapping not in frenzy, but in gratitude, as though something sacred had passed through. Aaliyah didn't bow. She didn't cry. She simply stood there, hands gripping the hem of her white dress, her chest rising with the kind of breath that only comes after you've told the truth. The spotlight glowed against her brown skin. She wasn't the quiet girl with the taped-up shoes anymore. She was something else. Something real. Down below, Miss Rochelle rose slowly, hand to her heart, her smile trembling under tear-brimmed eyes. She didn't say a word, but Aaliyah didn't need her to. That look said everything. As she stepped off stage, still dizzy from the applause, a woman in a crisp white blouse approached her. "Excuse me," she said with warmth. "You must be Aaliyah, right? I'm Clara Jensen. I run the Amarillo City Youth Choir." Aaliyah blinked. Yes, ma'am." Clara smiled gently. "I came to see my daughter perform, but it was you who made me stay." She pulled out a card. "We have a special program, a scholarship for voices like yours. If you're open to it, we'd love to have you visit the studio." Aaliyah turned to her mother, stunned. Miss Rochelle simply nodded, voice thick with pride. Go on, baby. This world's been waiting on your song. Saturday morning arrived like a quiet drum roll. Aaliyah stepped off the city bus holding her mama's hand, the streets of downtown Amarillo humming around them. She wore her best jeans and the same white blouse from the talent show. No makeup, no glitter, just her. Inside the studio, everything felt still. Walls lined with black foam, lights dimmed like candlelight. It smelled faintly of wood polish and old music. Leo, the sound engineer, looked up from behind the glass. He had kind eyes, stubbled jaw, and a face carved by decades of listening. "This the kid?" he asked into the intercom. Clara's voice responded gently. "Yes, trust me, Leo. Let her sing." The mic stand towered over her. Leo walked in and adjusted it to her height, then returned behind the booth. Clara gave Aaliyah's shoulder a light squeeze. "You can sing Scarborough Fair again, or anything else you want." Aaliyah turned toward the thick glass. On the other side, her mama sat in a folding chair, eyes locked onto her like nothing else existed. She turned back to Clara. "I'll sing my mama's song." No backing track, no piano, just air, and the memory of lullabies sung during early dawns in a hot kitchen. She closed her eyes. "Are you going to Scarborough Fair?" The booth didn't echo. It absorbed. And in that soft silence her voice rose, not loud but sure, like something that had been waiting years to speak. Leo didn't move. Clara folded her arms slowly. And when the final note slipped away, no one reached for buttons. No one said a word. They just listened. Leo leaned into the mic, voice soft but clear. "You haven't had formal training, have you?" Aaliyah shook her head. "No, sir." He nodded slowly. "But you know how to carry a note, control breath, feel each line. Your voice. It ain't big, it's not polished, but it's real." Clara stepped back into the booth and reached for Aaliyah's hand. "Did you know Scarborough Fair's been sung for centuries?" she asked. "It's a folk song for wanderers, for people who dream." Aaliyah smiled shyly. "My mama sings it when she's tired. Says it's like a lullaby for people who never gave up." "That explains everything," Clara whispered. That afternoon, Clara emailed the recording, unfiltered, raw, to the Emerson School of Music Scholarship Board. She didn't say much, just let the file speak. The program was selective. Only 2 rural applicants admitted each year. But Clara believed what she'd heard was beyond requirements. "You don't have to prove anything," Clara told her in the parking lot. "You just have to stay you." 3 weeks later, a pale blue envelope slid through the mail slot at the trailer door. Miss Rochelle picked it up like it was made of glass. She sat down at the kitchen table and tore it open with trembling fingers. Her eyes filled as she read aloud. "Dear Aaliyah Greene, we are honored to offer you full admission into Emerson's Summer Vocal Arts Program. All tuition, travel, and housing expenses will be covered in full." Aaliyah froze, then whispered, "Mama, I got in." She wasn't in the back row anymore, not in this story. By June, the Texas sun draped Austin in molten gold. Trees lined the shaded streets like cathedral columns. On top of a sloping hill stood Emerson Conservatory, red brick walls and tall frosted windows framed by ivy. To some, it was just a summer camp. To Aaliyah, it was another planet. She stepped out of the cab gripping the handle of her dented suitcase. Around her, students floated by in silk skirts, designer trainers, monogrammed duffels. They spoke in clipped accents, name-dropping cities and schools she'd only seen in brochures. One girl passed in white boots, humming a Mozart aria. Another boy had sheet music tattooed on his forearm. Aaliyah had never heard of vocal folds or resonance chambers. Her suitcase held 3 dresses, a toothbrush, and the notebook her mama had once patched with duct tape. Orientation took place under a domed ceiling where chandeliers sparkled like constellations. Clara stood at the front in a black linen dress. "At Emerson," she said gently, "we don't chase perfection. We follow the voice that tells the truth. Sometimes, it's the quietest voice that lingers longest." Aaliyah wanted to believe that. But when the first workshop began, vocal anatomy, head, chest, and placement, belief wavered. The instructor handed out colored diagrams of larynxes and diaphragms. Words she'd never spoken filled the whiteboard. Kids nodded, asked questions. Aaliyah scribbled as fast as she could. "You mezzo or soprano?" a girl asked beside her. Aaliyah looked up. I don't know. You've never had a vocal coach?" She hesitated. "No, ma'am. I just sing with my mama." That smile on the other girl's face, polite but pointed, cut deeper than it should have. Handmade dreams, she thought, didn't always fit in places stitched from legacy. But she stayed seated, stayed still, and stayed determined. In the corner of a voice lab designed like a music tech showroom, Aaliyah fumbled through sheet music she couldn't quite read. Eliza, the girl from Boston's top arts academy, leaned toward her friend and whispered behind a raised hand, "Looks like someone got accepted by mistake." The next few days carved her down. In harmony class, her timing slipped. In technique, her breath control wavered. One morning, she forgot entire verses from a song she'd known for years. The shame stung, not because she failed, but because the old taunts from Winslow returned, like ghosts crawling through her skin. One night, she sat alone on the dormitory porch, watching streetlights blink across the quiet courtyard. Clara found her there, silent. She sat beside Aaliyah and set down 2 paper cups of mint tea. "I don't think I belong here," Aaliyah murmured. Clara didn't flinch. "Why do you feel that?" "I don't talk like them. Don't sing like them. I've never even seen a vocal coach in real life." She stared into her tea. "I come from nowhere, Miss Clara." Clara placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "I came from a nowhere town, too. Showed up at my first conservatory with a beat-up guitar and a thick country drawl. They laughed. Said I didn't speak right. I didn't know what key I sang in either." She paused. "But one professor pulled me aside and said something I never forgot. Technique can be taught, but heart, that's a gift. And you, Aaliyah, you remind people why they sing in the first place." Aaliyah didn't speak. But in that still moment, something in her finally stopped doubting. A few days later, they were told to choose a solo for the final recital. Eliza picked a complex aria in Italian. Someone else chose a full Broadway ballad. Aaliyah chose her mama's song, "You Are My Sunshine," the one they'd hum walking home under leaking umbrellas, holding day-old cupcakes from the shop. When her turn came to rehearse, the room quieted, not out of respect, but curiosity. No one expected much. No music. No lighting. Just her, standing there in silence. She began, and the hush deepened. Not because she was perfect, because she was true. Her voice rose soft, like memory, like breath. Each word felt pulled from something older than the room itself. Eliza lowered her pencil. A teacher closed their eyes, hand to chest. When Aaliyah sang the last line, "You make me happy when skies are gray," no one moved. But something inside everyone had. She reminded them that music didn't start in a studio. It started in living rooms, in struggle, in survival. Final performance day arrived under soft rain. Umbrellas lined the walk to Willow Hall, a wood-paneled auditorium older than the school itself. Inside, the audience buzzed. Parents, critics, scouts. Backstage, Aaliyah stood in a light blue dress stitched from 2 donated blouses by a kind teacher. Around her neck hung a sun-shaped pendant, her mama's only birthday gift to her, ever. In the 4th row sat Miss Rochelle, her hair still damp from the rain, her coat creased from the night bus. She clutched a little pastry box and a hand-stitched napkin with Aaliyah's name on it. She looked around at the suits, the shiny shoes, the manicured parents. But she didn't shrink. My daughter will stand on that stage, she thought, and I will be here to witness it. The final showcase began with power. Operatic highs, Broadway belts, perfectly polished performers from the world's best prep schools. Each act received courteous applause, the kind reserved for brilliance that doesn't surprise anyone. Then the MC stepped forward. "Our next performer," he announced, scanning the card, "comes from Leach, Texas. Please welcome Aaliyah Greene, singing 'You Are My Sunshine.'" A small murmur rippled through the crowd. That song? That girl? Aaliyah stepped onto the vast stage, heart knocking against her ribs. The lights swallowed the audience, faces gone, only white-hot glare remained. She couldn't see her mother, couldn't spot Clara, couldn't read the room. All she could hear was memory, a rainy sidewalk, a paper box of leftover cupcakes, a hand pulling her close, her mama's voice singing softly beside her, "You make me happy when skies are gray." Aaliyah opened her mouth. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." Her voice was low, gentle. It didn't rise like a crescendo. It reached. Every note carried more than melody. It carried hours in a bakery, cold mornings, patchwork uniforms, and lullabies hummed through exhaustion. A hush settled over the audience, not boredom, reverence. A parent in the third row placed a hand over their chest. A student intern dropped their pen. Near the back, Clara Jensen leaned forward, breath caught somewhere between awe and memory. And then came the last line. "Please don't take my sunshine away." A single movement broke the stillness. Miss Rochelle stood. No clapping, no camera, just both hands pressed over her heart. In that one act, she told the entire auditorium, "That's my child, and I've heard her with every piece of my life." A second passed, then another. Then the room burst open, applause crashing like waves, some rising to their feet in full surrender. A few dabbed at their eyes. A photographer quietly lowered his camera to wipe his glasses. Even Eliza, once full of side eyes and shade, turned to her roommate and whispered, "I was wrong." Aaliyah bowed. But this time, there was no trembling. Because this time she wasn't just heard. She was known. The next morning, over pancakes at a tiny diner near the bus station, Aaliyah and Miss Rochelle sat sipping orange juice and soaking in the quiet. Then the door opened. Clara Jensen stepped in, holding a thick envelope. "Good morning," she said, smiling. "I didn't want to wait." She handed it to Aaliyah. "The Academy Board met last night. They voted unanimously. Full admission to the year-round program, starting this fall. No audition needed." Miss Rochelle's fork clattered to her plate. Her eyes flooded. Aaliyah turned, voice barely audible. Can my mama come too?" Clara smiled. "If she's the reason you sing like that, then yes. The school would be lucky to have her nearby." Years later, a popular talk show aired a special on rising artists. Aaliyah Greene, now a Grammy-nominated singer-songwriter, was asked one question. "What was the moment that changed your life forever?" She didn't blink. "When my mama stood up," she said, eyes shining. "Nobody else knew who I was that day. But she did. And somehow, that was enough." From forgotten silence to the center of sound, Aaliyah's journey proves that true voices don't rise. They endure. If her story moved you, drop your thoughts in the comments. And if your voice has been waiting to be heard, maybe today is the day. See you in the next one.